In a crazy turn of events, I finally get to do a budget build with a much larger budget for someone who needed a PC with as much power and performance as possible, while also being under 1,000 bucks. You might be saying, this isn't a budget build, budget bin. To which I say, okay, listen, there's the door, nobody is stopping you. You staying? Good. Roll the intro. So, to keep it short, here are the rules. All parts must be new, that there must be Wi-Fi, and that this has to allow for a playable 1080p experience, with most settings cranked to high. Pretty easy. The only other thing that needs to be considered is that this PC must be able to do some CAD stuff so that 3D modeling and whatnot will be a breeze, which shouldn't be too hard. At the same time though, I think this will be a challenge. But I feel like we have been given plenty of local room at the same time and shouldn't be too worried about not being able to accomplish this goal. Obviously, I already have all of our parts, but let's go through each and every single one of them as we go through this build and see what we got and know whether or not this is truly a great budget gaming PC build. One disclaimer I need to mention first though, is that I have bought these parts online and in store, as well as technically in other states an hour or two out from where I live. So I won't count taxes into the total until after the build is finished, and also because it does add for a bit of suspense. Gotta keep you guys on your toes somehow. But anyways, let's start with our motherboard, the ASRock X570 Pro 4. You have probably seen it recently, because I did make a post about it on my community posts recently. This is a very respectable AM4 chipboard with a nice sleek look filled with plenty of features. It is a very good all-arounder with DDR4 speeds up to 4066 MHz, a capacity of up to 128 gigs of RAM, 2 Gen 4 NVMe to M.2 ports, a Wi-Fi M.2 port, 8 SATA ports, and I am sure plenty of other little features that probably rock. ASRock. Yeah, you see what I did there? We only paid $129.99 for the board, which is not bad for something that will allow us to use many CPUs between Ryzen 2000 up to the 5000 series chips, which brings us to which CPU we went for. To reduce bottlenecks and grab as much performance as possible with our budget while keeping it sensible, I went with the Ryzen 7 5700X. It is an amazing 8-core CPU with 16 threads, an L3 cache of 32 megabytes, TDP of only 65 watts, all while being clocked at 3.4 GHz with a boost up to 4.6. It is hands down a great CPU for someone who wants a bit of performance for everything in between without having to go too overkill and keeping their wallets light all at the same time. We paid only $159.99 for this little guy, which in this case does not come with a Wraith cooler that you would normally see when you buy a 65-watt TDP CPU from AMD. But that is fine, since we want to get a nice cooler that will be able to handle this CPU and any upgrades with a much more power-hungry chip that the owner might throw at it in the far-flung future. But we will get to our cooler in a little, because I want to talk about our RAM first. Considering this PC will sort of be an end-all be-all to the degree of it needing upgrades when necessary or what have you, I felt it was best to grab 32 gigs of DDR4 RAM by Corsair. These are some of the best sticks out there, and these ones are clocked at 3600 MHz, which is plenty fast. Not only that, but I did get 4 sticks of them, so we should hopefully be making the most out of our RAM slots and our speeds while also running them all in dual channel. Which, speaking of speeds, to utilize one of those Hyper NVMe Gen 4 ports on our board, I was able to get a wicked fast Samsung 990 EVO NVMe SSD with a capacity of 1 terabyte. Now you may be saying, only 1 terabyte with a $1,000 budget? Yes, and this is done on purpose because there isn't much of a need for storage currently for the person who wants this PC. They intend to play more in the future, but right now all they told me that they want to play is Red Dead Redemption 2 and maybe Cyberpunk 2077. Most of the games they play will be indie games that will barely crack 1 gig from time to time, let alone 10 gigs per install. And any 3D modeling they will be doing just won't take up that much storage either. Regardless, they can purchase a 1 or 2 terabyte SSD in the future if they need to, especially when more games come out that fancy them an actual purchase. But for now, They can pocket the savings for software or games that they may actually want to play today. And I'm just happy that they could get this nice quality, crazy fast NVMe SSD that should last them for years upon years. Oh, speaking of quality, we can finally talk about the cooler for our CPU. Normally I may cheap out and go with a brand that is known but isn't what everyone uses, especially for its looks. But this time we went with one of the best coolers out there, at least trusted wise, the Hyper 212 by Cooler Master. This is the black model. It has no RGB as there's no real need for it, which honestly gives the whole build a clean feeling thus far. And the Hyper 212 is generally just a good cooler. However, I can't find the exact TDP rating for it, but it doesn't really matter since the R75700X has a rated TDP of 65 watts. So regardless, this cooler won't even break a sweat or otherwise get even close to thermal throttling, even when under heavy loads or running multiple applications at the same time, especially with those tasty copper heat pipes. Yum. But anyways, that is done, which obviously means PC case, right? Right. So what did we go with? Well, here's the kicker. I went with this Montech X3 Mesh, a case with RGB fans. Yeah. What did I just say a moment ago about our cooler? Okay, so I can explain. Part of the reason I chose this case was because, well, obviously it was an ATX mid-tower, which gives us all of the room that we need for our parts, but also because when shopping at a Micro Center, I saw many different cases with decent options, but none of them had the amount of fans or space that I was looking for while keeping the price tag fairly reasonable. When I ran into the Montech X3 Mesh, it was too good to pass up. I double checked with our buyer and they were all for it. It comes pre-installed with 3 120mm fans as well as 3 140mm fans, a ton of airflow, and a pretty quality case with RGB that is either an upside or downside depending on the build and person. All for just $60. Honestly, that is a steal of a deal and allows us to have a PC that certainly won't have us concerned if enough airflow is going through it or not. Most of our components fit nicely inside our case with plenty of room for cable management, extra SSDs, hard drives even, whatever else might be drawn up for aesthetics or function. And now, this part might be the most important to you all, since sometimes a graphics card can make or break a system, especially at the price point that we have it at. So what card did we go with? Since gaming is valuable, but not RTX 4090 levels valuable, I went with a sensible yet decent mid-range Radeon RX 6650 XT for our GPU. And I got it for a price that could have been a steal had I not gone out to get our case and other parts, to only come back to see the price of it jump $40 whole. Yes, originally I was going to get this card for $180, which would have been a spectacular price to pay, had not the seller on Amazon sold out only an hour after I scoped it out. In the end, it could have been worse though, as after I bought it, the price spiked again another $60 and proved to me once more that the GPU side of the tech market is still highly volatile. Regardless of all that though, this card is a great mid-range entry-level style option if you can get one for a decent price, as it will allow you to play any new releases at 1080p with some decent settings enabled. Continuing on through our build, after clipping a wire during installation of the board and I/O shield, and having to rebuild the entire unit, which is something that I just love. I love doing. I could finally get to our Wi-Fi card, which is nothing crazy, but at the same time, high quality enough for our lucky gamer. This Wi-Fi card is the Archer TX20E by TP-Link. It has Bluetooth, dual band wireless support. I mean, what more could you want? The only downside to this card, which is more of an oversight on my part, is the fact that the Bluetooth requires an unpopulated USB header to be, well, populated. Hopefully BudgetBin in the future will edit this to show you that he got a cheap splitter to amend this issue, as in the end the wireless card does work and ultimately shouldn't stop the whole build since it is just a small thing that doesn't matter too much to our buyer. But anyways, yeah, it was like $30. It's pretty good. Oh, the last part, our power supply. Arguably the most important part of any build. and I certainly didn't want to cheap out here. So I put in this 650 watt semi-modular PSU by Corsair. It is bronze rated, made by a reputable brand, and is certainly not made of cheap capacitors. So for $699.99, I expect it to outlive the system compared to other power supplies that are sold on the market today. Oh, and because it is semi-modular, there should be better cable management as well as plenty of wiggle room for upgrades if need be per the owner's needs. Which, by the way, ignore my cable management skills, they are not my forte. Plus, I have to return this guy later so I can add the USB header splitter. I will fix it, I promise. But anyways, let's check out that final result and boot up this promising build to see how it all looks. And hey, that's pretty good. Besides needing one of the 140mm fans on the bottom unstuck, this fellow looks not too bad. Especially the RGB. I swear it wouldn't look all that good, but this is fairly decent. They also aren't loud either, so for some cheap RGB Molex fans, I gotta say, color me surprised. Get it? Color me, forget it. But now we should see if all our work and number crunching has paid off. Let's install Windows 10 with the key provided by our buyer and play a couple games to see how it does. I made sure to configure our system and any appropriate settings, ran tests, stress tests, and well, to put it simply, this is a pretty great $1,000 gaming PC. I ran a Cinebench test, and for some odd reason, after our passes finished, we reported that we performed better than a CPU that statistically is better than ours. It's probably just a continuity sort of thing, but hey, that's cool. But what about gaming budget, Ben? Wasn't that one of the major points of this build? Yeah, hold your horses. I tried out the two games that our buyer said they were probably going to play in terms of the highest hardware-intensive games, and both ran fantastically. Cyberpunk was locked at 60, and I couldn't change that no matter what I did. It was probably my monitor or something. But they are definitely able to get more than 60 FPS, certainly, and if they want more, they can just turn ray tracing off or mess with the medium ray tracing preset to accomplish a near 60 FPS average while getting nice graphics and whatnot. It looks great, and so does Red Dead Redemption 2 at the balanced setting preset. I had FSR set to quality, right down the middle, but I imagine you could get well over 100 FPS if you play around with the settings, and a few others if you want to make the most out of what this GPU has to offer. But since they already mentioned they only have a 60Hz monitor for now, they really don't care, which I totally get. While they might play some newer releases, they seem to be more interested in just cheap indie games, whether they be something simple or maybe not so simple. But this computer will be a great all-arounder for that very reason. And they did send me some footage of them using Autodesk, and they said they love how it feels. So, good on them. For $1,000, this PC will serve anyone for a long time to come, and even have some chances to be better with upgrades that it might receive, despite being locked to the last generation of the AM4 chipset. But even then, I think this gaming PC is perfect the way it is. I hope you all enjoyed this budget build, even if it wasn't as budget-friendly as the others. But I will be making some budget-friendly builds in the future that are more realistic for everyone, so go ahead and subscribe if you want to see those videos when they release. Also comment if you think this was a good budget build, or anything really. Tell me about your PC if it also cost $1,000, what parts it has. I really would like to know. Also, if you like the video, you can go ahead and like it. Follow me on Twitter, join the Discord, yada yada yada, and oh, as always, thanks for watching.